right, what's going on, everyone? Hey, welcome. Welcome to week 2 of this message series called First and Best. And in this series, we are talking about the area of life that affects all the others. This one area of life affects you emotionally and physically, relationally and spiritually. And even though it is that impactful in your life, there are a couple simple decisions you and I can make even today that will get us on the path toward health and toward freedom. So in January, we're talking about why God gave us money and how he wants us to use it for good instead of being used by it. Now, last week I said that this whole series is going to be a very Christian worldview of money and stuff and possessions. And what we mean by that is that God's grace is the lens through which we see all of life. And so what Jesus has done for us changes the way we see everything, including our money. And so this is not some series to help you build your personal wealth or 3 tips on how to retire early. We're simply asking if Jesus really came to live the perfect life on our behalf, paid the price for our sin, has defeated death, and promised us a perfect eternity, how does that change the way we see the temporary dollars that are in our hands at the moment? Now, I also said last week that if you're here today and you wouldn't call yourself a Christian, you would say, I'm asking a lot of questions, I'm not really sure. We're always glad that you're here. And you can listen in as to how all that changes the way we see the world. But I hope you won't check out because I think you know. I think you know that those TikToks that come across your phone feel empty. And that get-rich-quick scheme you tried did not work. And there's something about God telling us the truth about our things that is going to echo in your heart and say, I think that that's true. And it's going to give you one more really good reason to consider following Jesus in your life. Now, regardless of your faith level today, I know that you spend a lot of time thinking about this very topic. One recent survey of 2,200 Americans revealed that the average American spends over 4 hours a day thinking about money and money-related issues. That is 25% of our waking hours thinking about this very thing. One thing I found interesting is that Gen Z and millennials are thinking about it more often than even Gen X and boomers. And then 33% of the respondents to that survey said they are losing sleep over money worries. Now, you may be tossing and turning in this season of your life right now. This may have been summed up by the great theologian who once said, "My mind is on my money, and my money is on my mind." Saint D.O.G. of Long Beach. Now, anything that we spend that much time thinking about has the potential of becoming overly important in our lives. You see, it's dangerous to make a good thing an ultimate thing. What we mean by that is that it was good that God gave us money because it helps us take care of our daily needs, and we can give it to those who are maybe under-resourced in the moment, and we can share it with the people that we love. All of that is really good. One of the most misquoted verses in the entire Bible has caused some confusion in this area. It's found in a book called 1 Timothy, and it says that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. You may have heard it misquoted as that money is the root of all evil. It's actually the love of money. When it gets in our hearts, it causes all kinds of evils, and some people, craving money, have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. So there in 1 Timothy, it says, yeah, it can cause problems. And sometimes it does bring drama, but in the words of another great theologian, mo money, mo problems, all right? That'll be the last 90s hip-hop quote of the day, I promise. But money isn't inherently evil. It's what we do with it that matters. And when it becomes the ultimate thing in our life, when your value in this world is primarily determined by how much you've been able to accumulate, and when the primary source of your comfort in a chaotic world is the size of your bank account, it has taken a disproportionate role in our lives. And that's the thing about money worries and materialism and greed, is that they don't take over our lives loudly. They just kind of creep in. It's insidious. It takes a little small crack and then grows. And then eventually it changes the way we see the entire world. And we won't even know it. Has that ever happened to you that one day you woke up and you thought something, you said something, and you thought to yourself internally, when did I become the kind of person that says those kinds of things? I found that it happens the older that I get in my life. When you're young, you look at people older than you and assume that they suffer from some generational dorkiness that'll never affect you. And then one day you wake up and look out your window and your first thought is how the weather is going to affect your joints. And you might as well write your own obituary at that moment, all right? It's all over for you. Or do you remember the first time you were really glad to get a quality pair of socks as a gift? You're like, what has happened to me? Or now you evaluate a restaurant not by the taste of its food, but by the volume of the dining room. And you're like, that's just too loud. I'll never go back to that place. You don't choose that life. It chooses you. Now, in Luke 11, Jesus says that greed works the exact same way. He was out there one day and he's teaching the crowds, and out of the crowd, this guy yells out. He says, Jesus, we got to get your help. Me and my brother cannot agree on how to divide our father's estate. It was money problems that was threatening to rip apart a family. And maybe you've experienced that yourself. And here's how Jesus responded. He said, beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own. Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. And Jesus says, beware and be on guard because you won't even notice when it affects you. Other sins in our lives, they're not like that. If you steal from someone, you know what you're doing. You are actively taking something that is not yours. No one has ever committed adultery and then been surprised by it. You don't look across the room and say, wait a minute, you're not my wife, right? You know what you are doing. But greed, it just sneaks in. We suffer from this kind of greed blindness. And the way that we do it is we self-inflict the blindness by playing the game of comparison. Have you ever done that? The fastest way of you wiggling out of the conviction that maybe materialism is taking over your life is to find someone with more than you. And therefore, it can't be your problem. I mean, look at their house. Look at that brand new car. Look at that wardrobe. Look at those handbags. I can't possibly be affected by greed if there are people like that in the world. But if you and I are going to take Jesus at his word that we would be the last to know, we ought to take actually the opposite approach. I love the approach that was suggested by Pastor Tim Keller. He said we ought to assume you are materialistic until proven otherwise. It would actually be wiser to assume we are struggling with this unless there is overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Most of the time when you and I are evaluating the sin in our lives, we take a very American judicial approach. We assume that we are innocent until proven guilty. And unless there's overwhelming evidence that removes all reasonable doubt, I'm probably a good person that doesn't have a problem. But instead, when it comes to this sneaky nature of greed, we ought to assume that I probably care too much. I probably do care too much that other people have more than me. And I probably do allow what I make in my career to be too central to my identity. And only then are we in the position to fight back. Let me give you a quick exercise you could even do today. It's real simple. All right? When you get home to your apartment and to your house, it's a 10-minute exercise. All you got to do, walk around your living space and ask yourself this question: do I need all of this? 10 minutes around your living space and just ask yourself that question. You may come to the conclusion that everything you have is entirely essential. I'd be surprised. In fact, in our country, we've even created a way to store the things that won't fit in our living space. The self-storage industry, get this, is a $40 billion annual industry, and it covers 2.1 billion square feet of the United States. It's a lot of stuff. Now, this exercise isn't meant to make you feel guilty or make you feel bad. It is potentially going to introduce the thought to you that maybe you have more margin than you had realized. And maybe you could do without a little bit more, and that would enable you to be more generous, just like I think you want to. Because God loves you so much, He's actually given you and me a standard that if we live it out, it'll help us fight back against that sneaky nature of greed. If you're new to all this, the word might sound funny at first, but it's called the tithe. And the tithe is when followers of God give God the first 10% of our income. The very first 10% that goes out before we take care of anything else is a gift back to God. And that practice is established in a book of the Bible in the Old Testament called Malachi. It says this: "Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, so there will be enough food in my temple. And if you do, says the Lord of heaven's armies, I will open the windows of heaven for you. I will pour out blessings so great you won't even have enough room to take it in. Try it. Put me to the test." Here's what's going on. God instituted this practice for two primary reasons. Number one, it was for the good of the hearts of His people. This practice of giving anything away, especially a predetermined percentage away, reminded them that all of this was His in the first place. And then secondly, those gifts would go to take care of the needs of the community. You just read with me that it was brought into the storehouses, and that storehouse was like a treasury. And so this practice was to create a people group that were open-handed with their stuff. They didn't make it ultimate, and they were investing in the thriving of their neighbors. That ought to be really easy to give to. But you and I know it's not always easy to give. You see, no matter who you are or in your family, you have a treasury of your heart. And if you want to know the treasury of your heart, it's the thing that when it's hard to give, it's still really easy to spend on this. That is the treasury of your heart. For some of us, it's our wardrobe. Honestly, it's actually kind of hard to give anything away, but we do not flinch when it comes to growing our clothes collection in our closet. And honestly, the way that we physically present to the world allows us to fit in and be accepted, and so it's hard to give, but it is so easy to spend on that. Others of you, you're like, man, that's not really my thing. I don't really spend on my clothes. And I'm like, I know, we can see you, all right? Like, I know that that's not your thing. For your thing, it's your home. It's your home. Like, you've got this long list of projects. You got even a spreadsheet of these remodels that you can't wait to give to. And quite frankly, it's hard to give because that slows down the pace of those projects. Your home is the treasury of your heart. Now, some of you right now, you're starting to feel a little bit better than other people because you're like, man, that's not me at all. I'll spend on my clothes. My home is totally reasonable. I am not materialistic. And I would say, not so fast, my friend. Because you find it really hard to give, but you find it really easy to save and to invest and to grow that number that is under your control. Now, is it unwise to take what God has temporarily put in your hands and see it grow and invest it wisely? Of course not. But when a good thing becomes an ultimate thing, it's become dangerous. And it's possible that that number is the very thing that gives you the comfort of control in a chaotic world. But you and I know that money is famous for making promises it cannot keep. God instituted this discipline, the tithe, for the people's own good and to take care of the needs of the community. And I, as the pastor of Real Life, if you call Real Life home, and this church has meant something to you, and you're learning and growing spiritually here, and this is where you found community, I am unapologetically asking you to begin tithing or take a step in that direction. It's for our own good. Now, I haven't been around forever, but I've been around the block a little bit. And I know there are a handful of famous objections to this call to action. And so instead of dancing around them, I just thought we would hit it head on today. And objection number one sounds like this: that's an Old Testament thing. We live in the New Testament. Jesus came and he died and he rose again, and now we live under grace. We don't do Old Testament things, we do New Testament things. I don't have to do the old thing, now I do the new thing. Nana, nana, boo, boo, you can't make me. All right, that's usually how people talk about it. But in the New Testament book of Luke chapter 11, Jesus is talking to these religious folks. And religion has this habit of giving us behaviors that if you and I can feel like we're doing it well enough, we'll feel justified before God. Religion actually gives us things to do, and if we do them so well, then God is going to have to reward us at the end. This group is called the Pharisees, and they were experts at following the letter of the law and missing the spirit altogether. They would dot the I's, they would cross the T's, they would be technically proficient and completely empty at the same time. And this is Jesus' warning to them. He said, "What sorrow awaits you, Pharisees? For you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens, but you ignore justice and the love of God. You should tithe, yes, but do not neglect the more important things." Jesus here, he affirms the tithe, but he also warns us against using it for something it was never intended to do. This crew that Jesus was comforting, they made a living out of being technically obedient, but meanwhile living a life that was the furthest from what God wanted them to do. These leaders would show up to the temple ready to give the exact amount they were supposed to give, and they would step over a man with a disability to get to their act of obedience. They were ignoring the needs of the community so they could self-justify themselves before God. See, Jesus didn't abolish the tithe. He actually made it the baseline. One thing that you'll learn when you read a lot about Jesus' life and what he said is he had this habit of taking what you and I deem to be extraordinary obedience and making it the expectation. He did it with anger and with sexual purity and now with generosity. And wouldn't it stand to reason that people whose lives have been changed by Jesus would be more open-handed? Out of the two groups of people, the Old Testament people living under the law or the New Testament people whose lives have been changed by grace, which would you think would be more generous? Grace doesn't lower the bar of obedience. It makes us more open-handed. It allows us to trust him more. Here's the second objection. And the second objection sounds like this: it doesn't have to be money. You'll hear this from some people. They'll say, I don't know that I'm ready to give financially, but what I will give is of my time. I will tithe my time. And you will never find a bigger proponent of serving than me right here. I deeply hope that one day you'll join a team here on the weekend, here at Real Life, if you haven't done that already, or that you'll join in the outreach efforts to serve our community. Using your valuable time to serve other people makes you less selfish and more selfless. That is an undeniable good. But using our time to serve others does not address the creeping greed and the creeping scarcity mentality that grows inside of all of us. It does not replace the essential nature of giving financially to God as an act of trust. Man, I certainly hope that you will learn the joy of service, but not allow that to replace the necessary act of trust, of trusting God with your stuff. Yes, serve with your time. Also trust that God has given you everything in the first place. He's taken care of you up until this moment, and he will continue to for the rest of your life. Here's the third objection. It's pretty practical. I can't afford that. Maybe through a series of decisions and continuing responsibilities, you are currently living at the max of what you make, or you have been living beyond your means, and it's been happening for so long you can't even imagine another way. And that's where we want to help. You've already heard today that in a couple weeks, a course called Financial Peace University is starting. And I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that hundreds of people here at this church would thrive by getting tools and teaching that will set you up to honor God with your stuff, to position you to be the generous person that you want. Man, we want to give you tangible help and practical hope. And you can do that by signing up in the app today. I'm hoping hundreds of you will take that step right now. Sign up for that course. You will not regret it. We'll remove any barrier necessary to make sure you get access to those things. But what I've experienced in my life as our family has embraced this discipline personally is that the tithe isn't enough to ruin you, but it will get your attention. All of us, with some discipline, can live off of 90% of what we make. It may require some choices. It will almost certainly require you to live a different life than all of your friends, but I know that it is possible. See, every time that my gift leaves my account, it still gets my attention after all these years. Because that number is big enough now to where when it leaves, I look at it and think, that's not nothing. And I have a bi-weekly opportunity to ask myself, do I trust God? Do I actually believe what he said? Has he taken care of me already, and will he take care of me in the future? And I get a regular rhythm to remind myself of that truth. It's for my good. I have friends, Clara and Evis, and they call Real Life home. And as I've gotten to know their story, I was so inspired by the way that they lead and love their boys, the way that they lead around here at Real Life, and their heart to give. And I know you'll be inspired by their story as well. Go ahead and check it out right now.
My name is Clara, and this is my husband, Evis.
And this is our real life story. Our boys have special needs, so whenever we do get a babysitter for them, we usually go get coffee, and it was in 2017. We just happened to come to Underground Coffee, which used to be there in 2017, and we heard the music. It was a Thursday evening. So then we walked over, and we sat actually in the amphitheater, because it was like a nice little introduction, because you're not really ready to walk in. And we kind of both looked at each other like, is this our new church? And we were like, yeah. And after that, we started bringing the boys.
Sometimes you just kind of check to see how other people react around them. And Real Life was really welcoming. And we really loved how they're seen. Daniel is 15 and Samuel is 12. Daniel has autism and Samuel has medical complexity.
Also autism.
Also, yes.
They're very different. They're on the ends of the spectrum. One's very social, one's not. One loves to, sing, and the other one's very quiet. But when he does speak, you listen to him because he's like, oh, I mean what I'm saying because I'm taking my time to use the words. Our
relationship with God has definitely deepened because of our children, especially Samuel being in the hospital for so long. He was born weighing 1.5 pounds, considered a micropreemie, was in the hospital just fighting for his life. I felt the most peace because I had God in my life. Had I not had him, I think then the worry would have been there, the financial worry. But God gave me such serenity, just peace, knowing that he was gonna take care of that. So the way we heard about tithing was through church.
Tithing is something that you do willingly out of your heart, out of your resources, not out of abundance, is out of what you have, tithing.
Yeah, because there's times where we haven't had very much, but we still give. And the bills come in. The bills come in and you see them. We call Samuel our multi-million-dollar baby because we would see the zeros next to that statement, and God provided. God really provided through that season and continues.
And then when we talk about it with the boys, we talk to them about tithing. Samuel, more than anything, was like, "Hey, Dad, have you logged on RSC app and tithe?" And I was like, "Yes."
He keeps us accountable.
Yeah, I'm like, I did it already, buddy. He's like, okay.
So now what we're doing is teaching him.
It's been infectious to them where they want to give.
And I think the more you're involved, you can see where the money is being put to work. For example, the Nights to Remember. And now we're more involved because our children have the needs as well, but we can see where that money's going, and it allows you to be part of it as well.
Our other son, he's also on the spectrum, but he's not really inclined to be social. It's hard for him to attend in the auditorium because the lights are bright, music, the sound, so it is a safe space for him to be like, hey, Dad, can I go outside to the amphitheater? And we'll just go outside and
It meets all of our needs.
it meets our needs and we can worship together. When we tithe, ROC is really using these funds to create a space for families to come worship as a whole. There are always reasons to hold off on giving, to not give, to maybe decrease the amount. You know, God gave us these resources. He's letting us participate in His kingdom. We know it's a tough decision financially, but our trust is in Jesus, it's not on our finances.
Well, each week of this series, I'm going to put 3 steps of application on the screen, and the good news is that you belong to one of them. There's not a single one of us that ever graduates from our journey in generosity, and every one of us can take a step. And the first one is those of us that need to move from nothing to something. Like you've never given a gift in your entire life because you assumed it was all yours to begin with. And second of all, maybe you were told that you got to keep all of it or else you'll never survive. And by giving this gift for the very first time, what it will do is not ruin you, it'll liberate you. Liberate you from the fear of if I don't keep everything that I'll never survive. And just last week, after the first week of this series, we had over 40 households give a gift for the very first time to Real Life. And you call this place home. Will you help me celebrate them for taking that courageous act? Man, we're grateful for you. And if you're one of them, I know that God is going to show you things in the next few weeks that you've never seen before. Others of us, it's our opportunity to go from something to proportional. We've given occasionally, we've given some when we were compelled to, inspired to, and now it's our opportunity to adopt the discipline that God gave us as a gift. We're going to predetermine a percentage of our income, whether it's the tithe or on the way there, so that God will show up and do exactly what He promised to do. Open the windows of heaven and pour out more than we could ever understand. One of the tricks that we do as a family is we've set up this thing online called recurring giving. And so we can time when our gift goes out. And the rhythm that happens at our family is I get paid on the 1st and 15th. And so our gift goes out on the 1st and on the 15th. And it's our way of predetermining that we want the first thing to ever leave our home to be our honoring and trust in God. So you can set that up super easy. I believe in your technical skills. I know you could do it. And I'm hoping that many of you will take that step today. And for others of us, it's our opportunity to go from proportional to generous. We've heard a message like this a long time ago. We took God at His word. We tested Him. He has shown up more for us than we could ever imagine. And it's been a long time since we have reevaluated our generosity. And we can go around our home and ask that, do I need all of this? We can look at the last time we took a step of faith. And if our gift is not getting our attention right now, if it's so easy to leave that we don't even notice, it might be our opportunity to step up and make a bigger difference. Each week, we're committed to making sure that this starts with grace and ends with grace. All of this is as a response to the gift that God gave us, and that's in His Son, Jesus. And the way we remember Jesus' sacrifice for us is through a symbol called communion. And there's bread and juice that reminds us of the greatest gift that was ever given in the history of the world, Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. It's the reason we have grace, the reason we have hope, the reason we have eternal life. If you didn't grab it on the way in, but you'd like to participate, just raise your hands and one of our awesome volunteers will make sure you get it. And if you're new and asking questions, you're not obligated. There's no pressure for you to participate along. Sit back and reflect and ask yourself, does that life, a life of freedom of fear, a life that is free to give generously and to see a big difference, is there something to that? And is God worth considering following? That's our prayer for you today. For those of us that are followers of Jesus, this is our opportunity to remember what He has done for us and why it changes everything about our lives, so you can take communion in your own time.